it's weird because like you would think like this big good thing has happened, right? And you're put in this like extraordinary position, but with my thinking, like eh, I go to like the worst possible scenario or outcome,
Hmm.
right? I just can't sit and enjoy the space that I'm in, right? I'm always like jumping to the worst possible outcome imaginable that could happen, and it's so hard to be able to sit back and enjoy it. Does that make
It
sense?
is, and we laugh about it, but it's actually really painful because I do
Yeah,
the same thing. I mean, if I hear one thing, my brain takes it to the very end. You know what I
sure.
mean? Like, and I think that maybe is an addict thing, but I also think it's a human thing sometimes, especially if you've been through a lot of loss, a lot of change, a lot of trauma, which is most people. So I don't want you to over pathologize yourself.
Let's jump into it. So this week we are talking about we're gonna usually I kind of get the feeling of how these things are gonna go is we're gonna have a topic and then meander off into 8 other topics. But um, this week I think we'll start with imposter syndrome, which is something
Yeah.
that I've experienced a lot with past week. But yeah, I mean,
How
what are
so?
your thoughts on what?
How so in the last week?
Well, I mean, as you know, I was in California for all last week, and I was shooting a ad campaign for the Hazel and Betty Ford Foundation, and whenever I went there, like in the 2 months of preparing for the shoot, I there was all these thoughts of like, yeah, I deserve this. It's gonna be super validating, like because I haven't had a gig this big since the pandemic. And as soon as I got there and I started talking to people, I was like, why the fuck did they hire me?
Aw.
You know, like they're definitely gonna fire me tomorrow. Like that's what I just kept thinking because like it. uh, First of all, they're the oldest. Hazelden is the oldest treatment center in the country, and they basically invented addiction treatment that we know of today. And then Betty Ford, like that's probably the most famous location for addiction recovery on the planet.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there talking to people, and I'm just like, I do not belong here, you know, like I don't belong in the position I'm in. Not that I don't belong there; they're all recovering addicts and alcoholics. I definitely belong there,
You
but
definitely.
it's like the position I was in. You know, directing this campaign, I just felt like man. First of all, I'm so fortunate and so lucky, but also like I don't know. It was just like this like intense humility that kind of came over me of like and it's happened on other big productions that I've directed, but it's just kind of but this one was more intense because it was recovery that I don't know, it was just I cried. I cried like 6 times when I was there.
That's like a beautiful thing.
No, it was. I was just so humbled by it, you know? And I don't know if imposter syndrome is the right word for it, but I was just like, I don't know, I was humbled in the presence of not only people I was interviewing, but just like, the space that we were in. Like, it was really crazy, but like, but there was an element of imposter syndrome of like, when are they going to find out that I'm not good at my job?
Yeah, for sure. I have a
You know?
theory about imposter syndrome. Now, maybe this is just to make me feel better, but I
Yeah.
don't think people who are really imposters think they're imposters.
What do you
So
mean?
I think that when we have that emotion of imposter syndrome, it usually
Yeah.
means we've elevated beyond our comfort zone. To me, that's what it means. Right. And so it just means you're not in a position that is consistently familiar. And therefore, you haven't gotten your sea legs yet. You know what I mean? Like you haven't gotten the ability to go, this is normal. Because then in 10 years, something like this might be like a no-brainer for you, and there could be something
Sure.
even bigger, and you'd be like, oh, they're totally going to find out I didn't deserve this. I
Yeah.
can't believe I ever thought this about Hazel. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I think people who are imposters, tend toward that personality disorder stuff we kind of touched on last week. And I think they think that they absolutely have a right and they're entitled to be places.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, no, I definitely did not feel entitled to be there. I felt like, but I have noticed that like people that like aren't very good at what they do, I don't know. It's like, but it's also too, like, you don't really, I think a lot of people fake it till they make it. You know what I mean? Like they have that kind of,
Absolutely.
yeah. And they, you know, they act as if, right. And that's like, you know, especially in the entertainment industry and creative work, like it's so like, especially with creative work, like it's so much of a mind fuck, right? Because like, you know, you're making something with your bare hands, right? Like
Yeah.
you're you know, you have a craft, like you're making something out of, you know, nothing. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, woodworking or you know, filmmaking, art, like whatever. And so there is this kind of like sense that like I think people act as if they belong, but I think most people deep down, they're like, am I really good enough to have this? You know, this opportunity,
Yeah.
you know?
I think it's really, I really do think it happens when you are growing beyond your comfort zone, literally,
Yeah.
like growing beyond even that which is familiar.
Sure.
Even your comfort zone is like, I'm a piece of shit, and I don't deserve
Yeah.
any good things. That's that whole, like, I don't like the word self-sabotage. I call it like self-gravity. And I actually have a whole module on this for my clients. And then I have a whole free course on self-gravity. And it's like the ways in which we try to calibrate our familiar narrative to that which is in our life. So if what's in our life exceeds that familiar narrative, we go, taking ourselves a little bit back down, even if that's just by thought.
Oh
And
yeah.
with
Totally.
with something creative too, it is subjective. So
Of
you are
course.
really putting yourself out there every single time.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, like creative work is really interesting because like um it, you know, you put your time and your thought and your effort into stuff, and like, you know, at the end of the day, sometimes I'm like, does anybody even really care? Like, why am I
Well,
why am I working this hard?
they paid you, so they care.
Well,
But
no, I mean, I don't mean them. I know they do, but I mean like with, you know, a lot of the stuff I make online, like with a lot of the content I make online, it's interesting. And one of the you were talking one of the like the videos that for sober stories is it's called the comfort zone of shame, right?
Mhm.
And I never really thought about like, you know, a comfort zone being a negative place, right? And I mean, but it's true. Like if you're so used to like shaming yourself and you know, not thinking that you're good enough and not thinking that, you know, you deserve anything, like that's a that's a comfortable place for you to be, you know? And
Yeah.
and I've never thought about that as like a comfort zone. You know, usually when people think about comfort zones, they think about comfortable places. But, you know, a lot of my life, at least, it's been my comfort zones have been extraordinarily uncomfortable.
Okay, so that's interesting because in the world I'm in, yeah, that's right. Until they become so uncomfortable that you lose things or
Sure.
can't move forward and things like that. But in the world I'm in, comfort zone is not a good thing, right? Because people are coming to me to get beyond what they're doing over and over and over again. But what I think, and I've been guilty of this too, in my less optimal moments, but telling someone that they enjoy feeling bad is also not a fair thing or a true thing, because I think that which is familiar is really hard to change. I mean, I really do think it. I mean, you and I have both been working on ourselves for a very long time. I've been in therapy almost consistently. Like I've missed maybe some time in between for sure, but almost consistently since like 2003. You know what I mean? So, and I went to other things before that, seeking help. And still, some of those things just come back. They come back. They come back. And every time, I know for me, every time I grow beyond what is familiar and I have a spell of success with that, I find myself trying to shrink myself again. And it's not because of anything anyone says. It's not because of anything anyone else does. It's literally like some mood that takes over me. And I'm just like, oh, I could just shrink this. It's just, and then I have to talk myself off that ledge. I don't know if you
Sure.
do that.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. Like I constantly do that where I'm having to like, you know, understand that, what I'm thinking about the situation is not real, you know?
Mhm.
Like it's
Either
all
way.
in my
Yeah.
head, you know? It's all in my head, and that's like, especially with this last week, there was a lot of like my abandonment issues that were being
Oh,
triggered, right? Because like,
yeah.
especially like professional abandonment issues. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people need to be told this, but trying to make it in the film industry is very difficult, and especially if you're like me and you've been fired a lot, you know. And so
No.
it was, it was really, it's weird because like you would think like this big good thing has happened, right? And you're put in this like extraordinary position, but with my fucked up thinking, like eh, I go to like the worst possible scenario or outcome, right?
Mhm.
I just can't sit and enjoy the space that I'm in, right? I'm always like jumping to the worst possible outcome imaginable that could happen, and it's so hard to be able to sit back and enjoy it. Does that make
It
sense?
is, and we laugh about it, but it's actually really painful because I do
Yeah,
the same thing. I mean, if I hear one thing, my brain takes it to the very end. You know what I
sure.
mean? Like, and I think that maybe is an addict thing, but I also think it's a human thing sometimes, especially if you've been through a lot of loss, a lot of change, a lot of trauma, which is most people. So I don't want you to over pathologize yourself.
What do you do when good things happen? Like for you?
I think at first I love them. Like I love when that happens at first. Um, but and I've gotten much better. There was a time where like there was no believing that good things could consistently happen, right? I remember my best friend that died in 2001. She was the best friend anyone could ever have. And I remember way back in like 2003, she died in 2021, excuse me. And then in 2003, we were having a conversation and I was like not where I am today in my career. Let's just say that. And she said something to me. She always thought I was amazing. She always said wonderful things to me. And she said something like, you could be so much further than you are. Like, yeah. And I got like incensed, you know? And I wasn't mad at her because she believed that. I was angry because it was so far from the realm of my perception of possibility that I was just like, that is ridiculous. Like, I wasn't there in my brain. And I've had to take success for myself in very small phases.
Sure.
Because if I don't, it becomes frightening. It's a lot easier now, though.
Oh yeah.
Back then there was no visual. There was no. That's why I mean, manifestation is I'm sure a very positive thing, and of course you can believe things. If you have a positive attitude, you're just going to perceive the world differently, right? But that's not how it's been digestible for me. I've had to literally go, okay, you can do this. Let's try this. And that's why I'm saying what you're feeling, that what you were feeling with Hazelden, Betty Ford you're gonna surpass that and you'll be doing something bigger. And then you'll be like, I can't believe I was like, didn't think I was good enough for that. Like, and you'll be like, I was always good enough for that. Because that's what happens. So
Yeah.
I enjoy it. Sometimes I do shrink myself, and then I have to go back to square one. And the way that I surpass that is I have to take contrary action. That's what works for me.
Sure. And
Contrary action is my thought. Yeah.
well, this reminds me of whenever I was in college, I worked as a door-to-door salesman,
Maybe
and
you did
you
not.
know, yeah, I did for
What
3
did you
summers.
sell door to door?
I sold educational books. You didn't know this about me? Yeah, I did for 3 summers.
Wait,
Knocked
you
on like
knocked on dorm doors? I'm just
No,
kidding.
I was. Oh yeah, yeah.
Kidding.
No,
Okay.
I was in No, I was in Mississippi one summer. I was in Arkansas, Indiana, Ohio. Yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
where did you
There's some.
reside when you were doing this?
This is when I went to college in Abilene,
You went to
Texas.
5 different colleges? Wait,
No, no, no. They would send you. This is a whole big story, but they would send you to like different towns in different states.
like Mormons, basically.
Yeah, basically. But
Like
we're
on a mission with selling educational books.
yeah,
Okay.
we're selling Facebook
All right.
together.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
That threw me off.
So there's a lot. There's a lot to get into like Southwestern and that fucked up culture. That was the company. It's called Southwestern. But yeah. I mean, one of the things was like it, like my first summer. You know, whenever I sat down and I sold all the books in the bag, right, which was about $3,000. You know, and you go into a house and 25 minutes later you walk out with like the $3,000 check. Back when people used to write checks, and before that, it was a struggle to sell like maybe one or two, maybe three. But once you do that, then I was doing that every week. I was selling at least the whole
Right, because your
bag.
standards. Yes.
Well, it's because like I knew it was possible, right? And I think
Here it is.
like yeah, I mean a lot of like, you know, like a lot of people I think that they stay well, there's a lot of reasons why people stay in situations they're in, and I'm not gonna pretend like I know how to get out of them. But I think a lot of times like people that grow up with money because they're so used to dealing with large amounts of money, like it's not that big of a leap in their head for them to make a lot of money, right? But for somebody like me who didn't have that, right, like asking for money or like asking for like this budget or this salary or something like that, it's very difficult for me because I think like because to me it's like, oh my god, that's a lot of money, but for somebody that grew up wealthy, to them it's just money. Does that make sense?
100%. It's a frame of reference that's just not there.
Yeah.
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 If you grow up like we did with certain types of religion, right? There's this idea that being impoverished is like a thing to admire, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's interesting too. I mean, I I think we recognize what's familiar and we have to keep moving forward. And there's shame around, even when you grow up the way that you did, there's shame around moving beyond that sometimes. I don't know about you, but I always grew up in an environment where my parents are depression. Well, my dad's deceased, but my parents were depression era parents and they grew up in great poverty because of that. And that whole generation, or most of them, had the mindset that like you always have to have something to fall back on. You always have to have like, and I don't think their intention was to like shit on my dreams, but that's how I took it. You know what I mean? So I think the
Yeah.
way I took it was like that meant they didn't think I was good enough, that they didn't think I was smart enough, and I would try harder, but I would like thwart myself at every turn. Right. And I think now I'm thinking about that. I wonder if like that personality was just always in me, whether they meant it that way or not. But you're not encouraged to have dreams in that kind of environment.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, we grew up lower middle class, and it was, I remember my grandma, because my dad was a preacher, my mom was a teacher. I grew up in a
Yeah.
I grew up in a country music song. But it's it's funny. My brother went to architecture school, and my grandmother has always been so proud of him going to architecture school. And for me, it was like, you know, you could start a landscaping business.
Not that
So like,
landscapers make a lot of money though, but yeah.
no, I know, but like my nana, but it's just like, to her, my grandmother, like architect, that is an actual career, right?
Mhm.
You go to school, you get a job, like that's a career. Filmmaking, that's not a art, it's not a career. You know, even though they're both like artistic
Yeah,
skill
for
sets,
sure.
but
Yeah.
you know, to her, to her, it's more of a, it's not an actual trade. Does that make sense?
A
It's
hundred
it's
percent.
it's a dream. And no, but she really told me that. She was like, you when I was really struggling, she was like, you should start mowing lawns. I think that would be a good fit for you. Like, thanks, Anna.
Not that
Thanks.
mowing lawns is wrong, but
No, there's nothing wrong with it.
I don't really think you've got much going on. You know, like
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. It was very passive aggressive. Like, you know, you'd be good at, you know, you don't need to do that. You know what I mean? Like, it was this,
it hurt.
it hurt definitely.
The whole reason you've had all the issues you've had. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Those things, and those
yeah.
things do hurt though. They really, really do.
Oh,
Like,
for sure.
I wanted to major in musical theater and it just wasn't allowed.
Really.
No, I was a performer from like 10 years old up into my 20s. And I even would direct musicals and stuff. I told you last time, I think I said that in the last episode, that
Mhm.
my dream jobs were like murder detective or Broadway musical director. Talk about bipolar. And so, but I loved it. I loved doing theater. I loved it not just for the creative part, but for the like community part, the community part, the engagement part, you know, the discipline part. Um, and it just like knocked the wind out of my sails. They just wouldn't pay for college if I did that, you know? And I know I'm privileged to have someone that paid for college, but it is hard when you have a certain type of personality and a certain type of creative essence or whatever, and it's thwarted in that way. It is.
Yeah,
I
I
will
think.
say supported me doing like they were very supportive when I was in theater. They took me, drove
Yeah,
me. But when it became like career time, it just wasn't.
yeah. Well, yeah, I think anyone that wants to go into the arts, I mean, if that's what you want to do, just go do it. Like, you know, I mean, it may not work out. That's fine, but you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, you gave it a shot. You know, and so I honestly do that, and like at least it'll be, at the very least, it'll be an experience, and you know, you know, especially the film industry, it's so hard that you will you will find out real quick if it's what you want or not, you know.
Yeah.
but
Well,
but
you're
you know, my dad is a fantastic artist. You know, he won like the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, which is a big deal, like their painting competition. He was like 14.
wow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was one of the first paintings he did and won. It's hanging in my mom's living room. But it you know, he's just this amazing artist. And you know, he you know, he lives with a lot of regret because he didn't, like, you know, pursue that as much as he could, you
Hmm.
know. And you know, for me, like, you know, seeing my dad who had all of his talent, right, all of his talent, and you know, seeing like I don't know, like the kind of, I mean, he's happy. He's, you know, he's had a good life. He's happy now, but just knowing that, like, he regretted not, you know, chasing. Like, for me, uh, you know, I didn't want to go that route. I wanted to, you know, even if I was going to be starving and poor, like, I feel like, you know, whenever I'm on my deathbed, it's like, you know, at least I tried. You
Yeah.
know.
And is your dad proud of you for doing this?
Oh yeah, and
For
my brother
pushing
too. Yeah, because I mean, we both, like, as kids, like, you know, my brother always wanted to be an architect, and I always wanted to be a filmmaker,
so you
right?
both
And
followed your dreams. That's amazing.
we both did. And like, I think that, like, I don't know, it's it's been very difficult, you know, and it's not, you know, it's been very, very difficult. But like, one of the things I've had to learn is to not be fueled by resentment, right? Because like, I've, for much of my career, things like my nana, what she told me, it would just be in the back of my head and be like, "Fuck you, you're wrong," you know, and like, you know, just other
Yeah.
people, like, just like. just this like I was fueled by resentment for so long in my career of like just proving people wrong,
Yeah.
right? And like I've learned that like that is a horrible way to go about any sort of endeavor, is just like fueled based off like the resentment of childhood and
Rage. Yeah.
stuff like
Everything
that.
is fueling me is I'll show you. I had a sponsor that
Yeah,
would say, "You hurt me, I'll hurt myself." That's it. Yeah. I have a thought though. This is it's kind of a segue, but it's sort of on topic. It is
sure.
on topic. What about imposter syndrome in relationships?
What do you mean, like I don't deserve this person?
Or yeah, like how did I end up here? Or what, have
Yeah.
you ever experienced that?
Yeah, with every relationship I've ever had.
And what is the feeling? Like, what is the experience for you? Like specifically,
There is why are they with me? Um, you know, I am, they're gonna leave. A lot of they're gonna leave. With my ex, I would have nightmares every week that she would leave, and she ended up leaving. But, I mean, but then those things I think are those abandonment issues they're self-fulfilling prophecies, I think, in a lot of ways. Because you don't want them to leave, so you do things to not make them leave, but you're latching on too hard, and then you know it's kind of ick, and so they back away, and then you latch on harder. It's just like, it's a vicious cycle. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like I, especially when I was in Nashville, it was a lot of I don't deserve this life. I do not deserve the life I'm living. Like I had a beautiful wife, we had a dog, we lived on 5 acres in the most beautiful country you've ever seen, west of Nashville. If you've ever been to Nashville, you go west of it.
hmm
It's just hills. It's beautiful, so beautiful. There
hmm
was a red barn across the street. It was like a Norman Rockwell pit.
yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
had a white picket fence. Like,
Of
I mean,
course.
it was like the ideal American, you know, thing. And yeah, I mean, I remember when we bought the house, I was by myself, and I just like collapsed on the floor crying because I didn't feel like I deserved it, you know? And it's just I think it's almost hard. It's harder with relationships than it is with like career imposter syndrome, because like you're in the relationship all the time,
Yeah.
you know? But yeah, I mean, what do you do deal with that with
Oh, for
relationships?
sure. And I have that abandonment stuff too. So it's like I have both. I have the abandonment and the avoidant. So, I can play both sides of that. And it's when you're in that anxious attachment place, it is
Yeah.
brutal. It really feels real. And obviously it has nothing to do with present day, but your brain, whatever your body memory, your wiring automatically just transmutes that experience from the past onto the present for sure.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's real,
Yeah.
right? It may
Yeah.
not be, it's not real, but in your head, it's real.
Well, it's not
Does that
just
make
in
sense?
your head, it's like physiologically real. I mean, for me, it's
Yeah,
my heart, it feels real. It feels like I'm in despair, and that's
really.
hard. Yeah, in those moments, yes, absolutely. And I feel like um that's I guess that's our version of imposter syndrome in a relationship. I guess, but that really comes down to the wrong type of messages, because if you read about anxious attachment, if you read about that, it literally means you got inconsistent messages as a child. And if you live with any human being, very few people wake up the same way every day. And if you're hyper vigilant about mood shifts, right, your brain is just going to start to react like it did from the past. And that's really hard to move beyond.
Yeah, because especially like, those patterns also feel normal to us, right? Like stability and like good things are not, they don't feel normal to us. So like so when we're in that, we're like, things should be way more fucked up than they are.
Yeah,
you know?
and then that becomes yeah. But,
Yeah.
I think you could probably put that imposter syndrome into almost any circumstance. But I really do believe it's a way to show you that you've moved beyond your comfort zone, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I mean, what do you do in those moments? Like when you're kind of feeling like, oh man, I don't belong here.
I don't really feel that like when I first got sober, I never really felt that. I mean, that's wrong. When I first got sober, I even felt that at meetings, right? Like I would go home from a 12-step meeting and be like, everything I said was dumb. No one's ever talking to me again. They hate me. That was like my mind 24/7. And one may call it self-centered. I would call it traumatized. Like, I don't think we think that way because we're so self-centered and awful. I think it's a trauma response. I mean, in my own therapy, it's a hypervigilance. It's like if I just am constantly vigilant, I won't get slammed, you know? And that is biochemical. It is not just thinking. But now, fast forward to 2023, I I don't feel that in any situation other than the closer someone gets, the worse it gets for me. So I've
What do you
advanced.
mean by that?
I only feel that fear of being left by people who really matter to me. Like, I
Yeah.
don't feel it in the world. And only person that I feel that with in terms of growing my business, because I do things in a very different way. And I've always done things in a different way, but anytime you do things in a different way, you're going to get like resistance and criticism, right? So I don't do regular hourly therapy anymore. I do intensive recovery programs and I only take a certain amount of people each year. And I do that. And, you know, it's been beneficial to a lot of people. But I still sometimes I'm like, how can I ask for this? How can I say this? This isn't me. And I'm like, I've had a track record of people saying, this is hugely helpful. This is changing my life. This is working better than anything has for me. And I still will kind of like try to shrink myself. But really, that's only me against myself at this point. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for sure. Do you do the thing where you over justify?
I
Right?
have before, but I try
Yeah.
not to because
Yeah. I have a real problem with that.
I know you do. And that's going to get better for you because
Yeah.
you should not you should not have to justify your gift. You have an innate gift. And if it's
Oh,
not for and think back to that thing you just said. If the person pulls away, you go closer. That's what justifying is. Like if you have to justify yourself, either you're just anxious or you're feeling an energy that's sort of critical. You know what I mean from the other party and yeah, you don't have to do that.
yeah, I have a real problem with that. It's just constantly just like being like explaining every little detail, right? And the reality is that they don't care, right?
No, and
Uh,
also you're
that
talking so much, right? When that happens, like if you're
yeah,
talking like with you, maybe you did it with Betty Ford, I don't know, but like, and then
yeah.
you like get yourself into a thing where it's like, now I have to keep talking.
Yeah. But I mean the reality is that like, you know, I had a really good mentor early on and I'm still horrible at it, but they're like, do you understand when you do that, you're just overcomplicating everything?
Oh
And
yeah,
like
for sure.
what people hear is complicated, 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 you know, and you should just sit back and say a price like this is how much it is, but you're trying to justify every, you know, screw, nut, bolt, everything that goes into it,
You don't
you
have to.
know, and yeah, you don't have to do that. And like that, but it's the same thing with like relationships, right? You know, and I fall into this where I'm, you know, I'm constantly having to like justify my existence in this relationship, you know, and like constantly having to like, you know, I don't know, but I mean, it's a hard place to be in, and it's really, really, really difficult to get out of that mindset.
Absolutely. It is. And you know what though? I promise you that's going to get better and better for you. I know it is. And every time you get close to someone, you're going to have to go through it again. That's what I do. I mean, that's my experience. Like I'll have to go through it again. And then I'll learn to feel safe in this context. And then, and then I'll let go of that pattern in a specific relationship. But um yeah, I think this imposter syndrome is interesting. People ask to hear about it a lot. Like, I think, I mean,
Really?
Yeah. And it's like, I think it's a universal feeling. I also think it's a universal feeling for people who have goals, high achievement desires. You know what I mean? That like want to move beyond. And then that voice, like that Brene Brown says, is like, who do you think you are? Comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so, are you saying that, like, you know, in all of these successful spaces, everyone just kind of feels like they don't
Yes.
belong, right?
I'm telling you, I said this last
Funny.
time. The bigger the degree, the more insecure the person. The bigger the
Do
job.
you,
I'm telling you.
do you know the book, The Man Who Is Thursday? Have you read this book?
No.
You should totally read it. It's by G.K. Chesterton. But so I'm gonna ruin the book for everybody, but it's kind of hilarious. So it centers around this detective that's trying to infiltrate this anarchist group that's basically controlling Europe, and the whole book is about him infiltrating this group and going undercover as an anarchist. And then when he gets there, he finds out that there's 7 people in the group, and their names Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And he
Uh-huh.
becomes the man who's Thursday. And as he's,
What do you do with the other Thursday?
well, you have to read the book. But what he finds out is that everyone
Okay.
else is everyone else is an undercover detective infiltrating the anarchist group. So they're all
Now I can't
they're
read
all
it.
yeah. It's still a great book, but it's like, but I feel like that's kind of what you're talking about, where you everybody fundamentally feels the same in those spaces, but you think you're the only one. Does that make sense?
100%. Yes. Yes, that's hilarious
Interesting.
though. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think because why else strive so much? You know what I mean? Like, unless you're trying to prove something.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
I keep pushing because there's so many other things in life that matter other than what you do, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to have money and all those things, but I think that drive to continue to get better and improve, it's like somebody's dad just didn't approve of them. You know what I mean? I'm not saying everybody. There's some people who are probably just geniuses and have amazing parents and they're naturally like, just a go-getter. But that's not, I think a lot of people who are driven because they're running away from something they never dealt with.
Oh yeah, it's me.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, but you're dealing with things though, Travis. I mean, that's a difference.
yeah,
You're conscious of it. And I think so that's where that imposter syndrome comes from. It's like
yeah.
you feel like a scared boy, and I feel like a scared child when I'm in that place. I really relate to that.
Well, I think for me it comes from like this like deep-seated feeling of not being wanted, right?
Mhm.
And it's this weird thing because, like, whenever you have opportunities that like show you that you're wanted, you're like, that can't, they're lying. It can't be real. Like,
Or
this
you got to
can't be.
apologize them, or there's something wrong
Yeah,
with them. And
yeah.
unfortunately, and this is a really important point, unfortunately, when we have that kind of belief system, we can tend to attract sort of emotional predators who say lots of great things right from the beginning, too. That's the danger of it. Oh, yeah. The more you fear abandonment, the more that you fear not being loved, the more likely someone can swoop in who has that love bombing thing, who has that desire to sort of take over your whole life. And they're saying the things. And so it feels safe at first. Does that make sense?
Totally.
And so you got to be careful because you don't want to go into like someone treating you like garbage, obviously. But if someone comes on really fast, and they act like you're the greatest thing that ever happened and they don't even know who you are really yet, or they're telling you they love you on the first date and stuff like that, that often can be a sign that they're trying to latch on, and you're vulnerable to that because of all the insecurities. And I've been the subject to this. That's why I'm saying it too.
Yeah. I've been the one that's latched on. I've definitely said I love you on the first date. It's definitely
More than once?
no, just once. My ex-wife. But it was just one of these things where I'd just gotten sober and I was having so many feelings and emotions.
How
And
long were
like,
you sober when you met her?
I think like 6 months. It was do not date in the
I'm
first year,
solid,
guys.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
date, just get married and meet someone. The thing is,
yeah.
I'm not
I
saying
mean,
that like, yeah, I'm not saying you can't get excited about someone early on,
Sure.
but looking back, did you really love her the first day?
It was more. I mean, she's great. She's a great
No,
lady.
no, this isn't
But
about this is about you,
sure.
Trevor.
Yeah. But I mean, it's more of like I was just like I was feeling things for the first time, really, right? Like because
Yes.
I had drank my emotions away, right?
Right. Get it.
And so like for me, it was like, she was beautiful and she was all things, and for me, it was just like, I hadn't felt that before, you know, and it was because I'm so used to being dead inside
Well, I
at
don't know.
that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
At that point. So like actual real like affection and intimacy was completely new to me. And so it was just kind of like doing cocaine for the first time
Right. Drug. So
where you're like, holy shit, this is cocaine? Damn, I love this.
yeah.
Like it was
Yeah.
yeah.
But you also have to look out because you froze. There you are. You also have to look out because you could be susceptible to that coming from the other side too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is what I always say to people is like the people that are in like toxic relationships, and we talked about this last time, but like I think most people that have like these like toxic patterns, like I feel like they're not aware of what they're doing, right? Like it's not like they're not calculating, they're not like a calculating psychopath. Like it's more of like they're just going from feeling to feeling.
No, yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that still hurts people though.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. Like,
Yeah.
look,
I don't think
yeah,
most people are walking around intending to be evil. No, I absolutely
no.
don't.
I think most people just we're hopping from feelings to feelings. And if you're somebody like me, I'll speak for myself, but like I have very strong feelings, right? And so when you have, especially being unmedicated and bipolar and all the things that I am, like
You're
you know,
unmedicated now?
no, back then,
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I have
back then.
strong feelings too. I
Yeah.
mean, I get it. Yeah.
And so it's just like whenever you have such strong emotions, like it's it's like unless you like do work, unless you're aware enough you even need to do work, which for me it took my life falling apart for me to even like kind of really had the awareness that, hey, Travis, you should probably go see a psychiatrist and get on medication and go to
Mhm.
therapy and all this kind of stuff. Um, like if you're living in such an emotional state all the time, like you're gonna have like these really, you know, strong actions and strong, you know, like responses to things. And so like, the idea of, abandonment, right? Like, you know, like feeling affection and feeling that stuff, like it feels so good, but then when you get it, you're terrified they're gonna leave.
Mhm.
And so you're just like you're acting on just like terror of abandonment all the time, right? And it's enough to drive you crazy, but it also drives them insane, right? And so like
Yeah, but you know what?
you know
The right person is going to be patient, Travis.
well, I think I've worked through a lot of that stuff since the pandemic, but and since 2019, but it's just been like it's I don't know, I just like I think that I have no idea where he's going with that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think this is something that a lot of people will relate to. Whether it's at work, whether it's in your group of friends, whether it's every day when you leave the house. I mean, I know people that are afraid to leave the house without looking put together because they think everyone's looking at them. I mean, people are walking around with this every day. And just my 2 cents is that if you feel this way, it's probably not accurate. And if you never feel imposter
Sure.
syndrome, maybe you are an imposter sometimes.
So explain this to me again. Why not everybody feels that way? Not everybody
I
has
think
like
a lot of people feel that way. I don't know. But I think that, if someone never has the sense that like, do I fit in, or am I like possibly not up to par here? They're either not in touch with their emotions, or they think they're entitled to things, or they had such amazing parents in childhoods that they're just that confident. And I don't know which of those three. I don't know how to determine who's which of those three. I do know that most people feel like imposters a lot of the time.
Yeah.
That's
I
why
come off
like it has a name
like,
for a reason.
so I mean, you work with a lot of successful clients. Is
Mhm.
that like a big thing that they have to work through?
Sometimes, yeah. By the time they come to me, a lot of them have already gotten past that in their careers, but they're
Yeah.
definitely feeling like it in other places, right?
Really? Oh,
Like, oh yeah, for sure. And it's like, it depends. Like most of my clients are, well, they're all different ages actually, but the clients that have those very successful careers often are at the latter end of those careers. So they've already seen all the fruits of their labor. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah.
Definitely my younger clients have that for sure. I mean, I work with people who are creative as well, and people who have these amazing creative talents that'll keep getting these successes. And they're like, yeah, but it's not good. And you'll have to remind them every time that like, you never even thought this was possible 2 years ago. And now it's possible. And you're like saying it's not good, you know?
Like the work isn't good or the
You
opportunities aren't
got
good?
this success that you've been wanting for years that you never even thought was
Yeah.
attainable. And then once you get the success, you can't say it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, I remember before I went to rehab, you know, I was just starting to get really, really, really good work in Austin.
Mhm.
And I was starting for the first time I was starting to make like I was starting to make things that were at the level of my taste, which I think takes a long time. It takes a long time to be able to that's a whole nother conversation. But it takes a long time and a lot of effort and practice and work to be able to craft things that are at the level of the taste that you have that made you want to do this in the first place. Right.
100%. Yep.
And I was finally getting there. Right. And I remember I was in an event and I introduced myself to somebody, and apparently they had seen my work or something online, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know who you are. Like I've seen your stuff," and I was like, "Holy shit, did not feel as good as I thought it would be." Right? You know, like a stranger, you know, knowing things you've done, and it was like it kind of felt like it was flattering, but you know, like that kind of like recognition in my head was what I wanted, right? And then we finally get a taste of it. You're like, man, that wasn't like the hit of cocaine that I thought it was going to be. That was just kind of like that wasn't like the. It wasn't like the you know that I can't figure out how to say it.
Umph,
What?
the umph.
Yeah, it didn't heal me, right?
No,
It
it's never,
didn't take all the pain away. It didn't like
no,
do
it
all
never,
the things that I thought it would for me. And so it was just kind of like after that happened, I kind of mentally spiraled
mhm.
because I was just like I was like, man, my priorities are all wrong. You know, this is not
Well, it's not a
what I
priority.
shouldn't be. Well, I shouldn't be chasing that feeling. You know, because that feeling doesn't exist. Does that make sense?
Sure, but it's also human to chase that feeling. And also, what we all really want is for people to love us and accept us as we are
Okay.
and care about us and tell us we're good enough. And it never comes from things like external things. It just doesn't. So
What do you mean?
people don't love us because of what we do for a living. People don't love us because we got a good grade. People don't love us because we are successful. People don't love us. I'm saying us as the, every us. And they love us because of who they are. And they could see something in the other person that is lovable and they choose to love us. That's why. So, I mean, that's the truth. Like everyone in my life I love. I love because I choose to love them.
Yeah,
And it's
that's
because of who
interesting.
I am that I see whatever it is in that person that I love. And, nothing on the outside is making me go, that's the thing. Oh, they got this degree. Oh, they're this. It's just a feeling and a choice. So just, so that's why those things that are external from strangers don't matter. I'm sure it's probably not that fun to be famous. I'm not saying I feel sorry for famous people, but when a famous person dies and if you're upset about it, that's fine. But the reality of it is they have people who actually love them, who knew their intricacies, who knew their vulnerabilities, who knew them from childhood, that are devastated. And those are the real relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. That's
Yeah.
like, what?
No, I just think, yeah. So I don't know. I wonder if we've talked enough about this.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, that was a really heavy thing to end on. That
Well,
was
no,
like,
I just mean
well,
that, like, yeah, I mean, that person coming up to you is awesome, and you actually are putting out good work because you actually got the Betty Ford thing because of the work you're putting out. If I do
sure.
correctly remember this, so that you're putting a lot of goodwill into the world, and goodwill will always
Yeah.
eventually come back when you need it most. But I think in terms of that giving you confidence, hell no, it doesn't. Like, it's the person going, I love you, man. And like,
Yeah.
you're great. And I don't care about all the other stuff. That's what makes us feel loved.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. And I think what I realized is that, like, and I'm not saying I've ever been famous or ever will be famous, but it was just like a stranger recognizing things at the time. What I realized is like that relationship is not going to make me whole. Does that make sense?
No, it won't.
Yeah.
So
And it's
I think
like
it's awesome.
what what will make me whole is, the personal relationships that I have with, folks that I love and I care about. That's what will.
That
But
like you just the way you are.
yeah, exactly. For me and that know me, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that is I think it's a good place to end it. Do you have any closing thoughts for the good
Yeah.
people?
Just that if you have imposter syndrome, congratulations. You're moving beyond that which you've already come to find familiar.
Amazing. This is why people have trouble going to AA. Maybe that's another topic for another time.
And yeah, we can talk about that another time. Absolutely. I have lots
Yeah.
of thoughts on that one.
Yeah, same. All right. Well, I think that concludes episode 2 of We Used to Be Drunks. I appreciate all of our listeners. I know nobody's listening, but if you are, we appreciate you. And yeah, don't do drugs, guys. See you soon. Bye.